What if you're not as free as you think? Let me ask you something. Have you ever promised yourself that you were going to change, and then somehow found yourself doing the exact same thing again? You tell yourself, tomorrow I'll wake up early. Tomorrow comes. The alarm rings. You hit snooze. Then another 5 minutes. Then another. And suddenly you're rushing through your morning, wondering where the time went. Or maybe you tell yourself, I'm going to stop procrastinating. You know exactly what needs to be done. You even know that avoiding it will create more stress later. But instead of doing the difficult thing, you open your phone. You check one notification, then another. You watch one short video, then another. And before you know it, an hour is gone. Later, you feel guilty. You tell yourself, why do I keep doing this? Here's the strange part. You knew what you wanted. You knew what you should do. And yet, you still did something completely different. So what happened? Were you weak? Were you lazy? Did you lack discipline? Maybe, but maybe there's another explanation worth exploring. Maybe part of your behavior is being driven by patterns that operate faster than your conscious decision-making. Patterns created by repetition. Patterns created by experience. Patterns created by emotional associations. Patterns created by the way you've learned to interpret the world. And once those patterns become familiar, they can feel almost automatic. Think about that for a second. What if some of the things you call personality are actually learned patterns? What if some of the things you call lack of confidence are repeated experiences? What if some of the things you call laziness are actually avoidance patterns? And what if some of the things you call bad luck are decisions you're making based on beliefs you don't even realize you have? I'm not saying every problem in your life is happening because of your mind. That's not true. Real circumstances matter. Money matters. Relationships matter. Opportunity matters. Health matters. Your environment matters. Life is complicated. But your internal world matters too. Because the way you interpret a situation can influence the way you respond to it. And your response influences what happens next. That is the part we're going to explore. Not magic, not wishful thinking, not think about becoming rich and money will magically appear. Something much more practical. We're going to explore how your mind learns patterns, how those patterns can influence behavior, and why changing your life often begins with noticing what has been happening inside you. So before we go any further, think about one thing in your life that you desperately want to change. Don't pick 10 things, just one. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's overthinking. Maybe it's your lack of consistency. Maybe you keep starting things but never finishing them. Whatever it is, keep that one thing in your mind, because we're going to come back to it throughout this video. Chapter 1. The human brain loves patterns. Here's something fascinating about your brain. It doesn't want to consciously analyze every single thing you experience. Imagine if it did. Imagine having to consciously think about every step while walking. Lift my left foot. Move it forward. Balance. Put it down. Now move my right foot. You would be exhausted before breakfast. Instead, your brain learns. It recognizes patterns. It predicts. It automates familiar behaviors. And that's incredibly useful. Imagine learning to drive for the first time. At first, everything requires attention. The steering wheel, the mirrors, the pedals, the road, traffic, signs, other cars. Your brain is overloaded. But after enough practice, many of those actions become familiar. You don't consciously narrate every movement. Why? Because your brain has learned the pattern. Now, here's where this becomes interesting. Your brain can learn behavioral patterns too, not just physical movements. Suppose every time you're stressed, you grab your phone. At first, it's simply a choice. But imagine repeating it hundreds of times. Stress appears. Phone appears. Discomfort appears. Scrolling. Eventually, you may not even consciously decide to do it. Your hand reaches for the phone almost automatically. That's a learned pattern. And here's the important distinction. Automatic does not mean permanent. It simply means familiar. That's a huge difference. Because if something is permanent, you can't change it. But if something is learned, there may be a possibility of learning something different. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually. Chapter 2. Why your brain uses old information. Now imagine you're walking down a street at night. You hear footsteps behind you. What happens? Before you fully analyze the situation, your attention changes. You become alert. You look around. Your body may become tense. Why? Because your brain is constantly trying to predict what might happen next. It doesn't wait for complete information. It uses previous experience and available signals to make fast predictions. That's useful when there's a genuine threat. But the same basic tendency can also influence everyday life. Suppose you once had a terrible experience speaking in front of people. Maybe you forgot what you wanted to say. Maybe someone laughed. Maybe you felt embarrassed. Now, months or years later, someone asks you to speak again. The current situation is different, but your brain remembers the old emotional experience. You might immediately think,
I can't do this.
notice what happened. The event hasn't happened yet, but your mind is already predicting an outcome. And sometimes, we respond to the prediction before reality has even had a chance to happen. That's why one of the most useful questions you can ask yourself is, am I responding to what is happening right now, or am I responding to what happened before? That's a powerful question, because the present situation and your interpretation of the present situation aren't always the same thing. Chapter 3. Your past can become a filter. Think of your mind like a pair of glasses. Not literal glasses, a mental filter. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different interpretations. Imagine a manager tells two employees, "We need to talk about your recent performance." Employee A thinks, "I'm probably getting fired." Employee B thinks, "Okay, maybe there's something I need to improve." Same sentence, different interpretation. Why? Because each person may bring a different history into that conversation. Maybe employee A has experienced harsh criticism before. Maybe they've been made to feel like mistakes mean failure. So their brain immediately connects criticism with danger. Employee B may have grown up learning that feedback is information. So they hear the same words differently. This is why your past can act like a filter. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Sometimes we don't even realize we're wearing the filter. We think, that's just reality. But maybe it's not reality. Maybe it's your interpretation of reality. And that doesn't mean your interpretation is always wrong. It means it is worth examining. Ask yourself, why do I see this situation this way? What experience taught me to interpret it like this? Is there another reasonable way to look at it? Those questions don't automatically solve a problem, but they create something incredibly important: awareness. And awareness gives you a chance to choose your response, instead of simply repeating an old one. Chapter 4. The stories you learn about yourself. Now let's go deeper. Every person carries a story about themselves. Sometimes that story sounds like, I'm smart. I'm hardworking. I'm bad with money. I'm not good with people. I'm a failure. I'm creative. I'm not disciplined. I'm just an anxious person. These statements feel like facts, but many of them are actually conclusions. And conclusions come from experiences. Imagine a child who struggles with math. One bad test happens, then another. Someone says, "You're just not a math person." The child hears it. Maybe they hear it again. Eventually, they start believing it. Now something interesting happens. The next time they see a difficult math problem, they may think, I already know I'm bad at this. They become discouraged. They put in less effort. They avoid practice. Their performance doesn't improve. Then the result appears to confirm the original belief. See, I really am bad at math. But look closely. The belief influenced the behavior. The behavior influenced the result. And the result strengthened the belief. That's how a mental pattern can reinforce itself. This is why labels can be dangerous. Not because every label is false, but because some labels can become self-fulfilling expectations. Chapter 5. This is just who I am. This brings us to one of the most limiting sentences people use. That's just who I am. Think about how often people say it. I'm just lazy. I'm not a morning person. I'm terrible at talking to people. I've never been confident. I'm just bad with money. I always procrastinate. I can't stick to anything. Now ask yourself, are these identities or are they descriptions of repeated behavior? That's a very different question. Suppose someone says, I procrastinate. That describes a behavior. Now there is something to work with. But if they say, I am a procrastinator, the behavior starts becoming part of their identity. And once something becomes part of your identity, changing it can feel like you're fighting yourself. So instead of, I'm lazy, try, I've developed a pattern of avoiding certain tasks. Instead of, I'm not confident, try, I haven't built much confidence in this area yet. Instead of, I'm terrible at this, try, I haven't learned this skill yet. Notice the word yet. It doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't magically create ability, but it leaves room for learning. And that room matters, because you are not required to keep proving an old version of yourself correct. Chapter 6. Your Inner Voice. Now let's talk about something you probably experience every single day. You talk to yourself, not necessarily out loud, inside your head. And sometimes that voice sounds like, come on, get up. Just do it. I'm going to mess this up. What if they judge me? I'll start tomorrow. Why am I like this? You're never going to get anywhere. Think about that last one. If someone else spoke to you like that every day, would you want to spend time around them? Probably not. But because the voice is inside your own head, you may never question it. And here's the important point. You don't have to replace every negative thought with some fake positive statement. If you are struggling, telling yourself, I'm perfect, everything is amazing, may not feel believable. Instead, make the thought more accurate. Instead of, I can't do this, try, I don't know how to do this yet, but I can learn the first step. Instead of, I'm going to fail, try, failure is possible, but so is learning from the attempt. Instead of, everyone is going to judge me, try, some people may judge me, but I can't control everyone's opinion. That's not blind positivity, that's realistic thinking. And realistic thinking can be much more useful than pretending every problem is easy. Chapter 7. Why Repetition Matters. Now we come to one of the most important concepts, repetition. Think about learning a language. You don't hear a word once and automatically become fluent. You hear it, you use it, you make mistakes, you hear it again, you use it again. Eventually, it becomes familiar. The same general principle applies to many learned behaviors. What you repeatedly practice becomes easier to access. That's why habits can become powerful. But here's the part people often misunderstand. Repetition doesn't mean you can simply repeat any sentence 1,000 times and force reality to change. If you stand in front of a mirror saying, "I'm an expert athlete," but never train, the statement doesn't replace training. If you say, "I'm financially successful," but never learn financial skills or change your financial behavior, the statement doesn't magically create wealth. The useful part of repetition is that repeated thoughts can influence attention, expectations, and behavior. And behavior is where things become real. So if you want a different life, don't only repeat a different sentence. Practice a different behavior. Chapter 8. The Habit Loop. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're working on something difficult. You get stuck. You feel frustrated. Your brain says, "Let's take a quick break." You pick up your phone. You scroll. For a few minutes, you feel better. The difficult task is still there, but your discomfort has temporarily disappeared. This matters, because the brain may learn. Difficult feeling, escape, relief. Now imagine this happens again and again. Eventually, the moment discomfort appears, you may automatically look for escape. That's why some habits are so difficult to break. You're not only fighting the behavior, you're fighting the emotional reward attached to it. So instead of asking only, "How do I stop doing this?" ask, "What am I getting from doing this?" Is it relief? Entertainment? Comfort? Avoidance? Control? Connection? Understanding the reward can reveal what needs to be replaced. Because if you remove a behavior without replacing the function it served, you may simply find another way to get the same reward. Chapter 9. Procrastination goes deeper than "I'm lazy." Let's take procrastination. You have an important task. You know it's important. You know delaying it will make things worse. And yet, you avoid it. Why? Maybe it's boredom. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you don't know where to start. Maybe you're afraid the result won't be good enough. Maybe finishing it means being judged. Maybe starting it forces you to confront how much work is actually required. The brain doesn't always choose what's best for your future. Sometimes it chooses what's emotionally easier right now. That's a critical distinction. Your future self wants the project finished. Your present self wants relief. And the present self is the one holding the phone. So how do you deal with that? Make the first action ridiculously clear. Don't say, "I need to finish my project." Say, "I'll open the document." Then, "I'll write the first 3 sentences." That's it. Why? Because vague tasks create uncertainty. Clear actions reduce uncertainty. And once you've started, the emotional resistance may decrease. Not always, but often enough to make starting easier. Chapter 10. The Negative Thinking Cycle. Now let's go deeper into negative thinking. Imagine you're about to start something important. A thought appears. What if I fail? That thought creates anxiety. The anxiety makes you uncomfortable. To escape the discomfort, you avoid the task. Avoiding the task gives you temporary relief. That relief teaches your brain, good decision, we escaped. But later, you feel guilty. You think, I never finish anything. That thought damages your confidence. Then the next challenge feels even more threatening, and the cycle begins again. Notice something. The brain isn't necessarily trying to destroy your future. It may simply be trying to reduce discomfort in the present. That's why some self-defeating behaviors feel good for a few minutes. They solve the immediate emotional problem while creating a bigger future problem. And once you understand that, you can start asking a better question. Not, why am I so weak? But, what discomfort am I trying to escape? That question can completely change. Chapter 11. Fear doesn't always need to disappear. Here's another misconception. People think, when I'm confident, I won't be afraid. But confidence doesn't always mean the absence of fear. Sometimes confidence means, I know I can handle the possibility of being uncomfortable. Think about someone learning to speak in public. The first presentation may be terrifying. Their heart beats faster. Their hands may feel uncomfortable. Their voice may shake. But they do it. Then they survive. Next time, maybe they're still nervous. Chapter 12. Your environment may be stronger than your willpower. Now look around you. Your environment is constantly giving your brain signals. Your phone is a signal. Your notifications are signals. Your friends are signals. Your family conversations are signals. Your workspace is a signal. Your social media feed is a signal. Suppose you want to read more, but your phone is sitting directly beside you with constant notifications. At the same time, your book is in another room. You don't necessarily have a character problem. Your environment is simply making one behavior easier than the other. So instead of asking, why don't I have enough discipline? Ask, how can I make the behavior I want easier? Put the book where you can see it. Keep the phone farther away when working. Prepare your workspace before you need it. Remove unnecessary distractions. This is important because lasting change isn't always about fighting yourself harder. Sometimes it's about making the right behavior easier. Chapter 13. Your digital world is part of your environment. There's another environment we often forget. Your digital environment. Think about your feed. What are you consuming for hours every day? Are you constantly comparing your life to someone else's? Are you consuming endless outrage? Are you watching content that leaves you anxious? Or are you learning, creating, thinking, building skills? The internet isn't automatically good or bad. It's a tool. But whatever repeatedly captures your attention becomes part of your mental diet. And attention is limited. If your attention is constantly being pulled in 10 different directions, you may have less attention available for the things that actually matter to you. So occasionally ask, is the content I'm consuming helping me become the person I want to be? You don't have to delete everything. You don't have to become extreme. Just become intentional. Because what you repeatedly give your attention to can shape what feels familiar. In Chapter 14, the most important idea of Part 1. Now let's bring everything together. Your mind learns. It learns from repetition. It learns from experience. It learns from emotional associations. It learns from your environment. It learns from what you repeatedly pay attention to. And over time, those learned patterns can influence your behavior. But here's the part I want you to remember. A learned pattern is not a life sentence. Your past explains some of your patterns. It doesn't have to control every future decision. You may have learned to procrastinate. You can learn to start. You may have learned to avoid difficult conversations. You can practice having them. You may have learned to doubt yourself. You can build evidence that you're capable of learning. You may have learned to react automatically. You can practice creating a pause before responding. None of this happens overnight, and that's important, because the internet loves dramatic transformation stories. 7 days changed my life. Wake up at 5 a.m. and become unstoppable. Think positive and everything changes. Real change is usually less dramatic. It's quieter. You make one different choice, then another, then another. You fail. You adjust. You try again. And eventually, the new behavior becomes more familiar. That's how change can actually look. Not fireworks, not magic, just repetition. Final section. Look at yourself differently. So now, go back to the one problem you chose at the beginning of this video. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's overthinking. Maybe it's inconsistency. Now ask yourself 4 questions. Number 1. What exactly am I doing? Be specific. Don't say, "My life is a mess." Say, "I keep avoiding important tasks until the last minute." That's measurable. Number 2. When does it happen? Morning? Night? When you're stressed? When you're bored? When you're around certain people? Number 3. What feeling comes right before the behavior? Fear? Boredom? Stress? Uncertainty? Embarrassment? And finally, number 4. What do I get from the behavior? Relief? Entertainment? Escape? Comfort? Understanding that answer can reveal more than simply blaming yourself. Because once you can see the pattern, you can begin working with it. And that brings us to the biggest lesson of Part 1. You don't have to hate the person you are today in order to become a better version of yourself tomorrow. You can understand yourself. You can study your patterns. You can be honest about your weaknesses. And you can still believe that change is possible. Your past may have influenced the person you became, but your next choice... And now we reach the question that matters most. If your brain has spent years learning certain patterns, can you intentionally teach it new ones? Can you change the way you talk to yourself? Can you replace destructive habits instead of simply fighting them? Can visualization actually help when it's used correctly? What role do affirmations really play? How do you build confidence when you don't feel confident yet? How do you stop waiting for motivation? And perhaps the biggest question of all, how do you turn a new way of thinking into a new way of living? That's where Part 2 begins, because understanding your mind is only the first step. The real challenge is using that understanding.